Have you ever looked around and realized it feels like the world moved on without you? Like life took off at full speed and somewhere along the way, you didn't. Friends started families, chased careers, made new plans, changed cities, changed rhythms. Social media is filled with milestones and moments, and meanwhile, you're still in the same room, staring at the same walls, carrying the same pain. Maybe for you, it wasn't a choice. Maybe life just paused. A death, a divorce, a layoff, or maybe it was quieter than that. Just a slow fading of connection, a slow disconnection from relevance. One day you woke up and realized you weren't needed in the way you once were, and it hurts more than you know how to say. You don't resent the people who moved on. Not really. But you can't help but wonder what that says about you, that you're no longer part of the flow, no longer the one people call, no longer in the pictures, the plans, the center of someone's day. It's like you're watching life from the outside now. And even if people check in, even if they're kind, you can feel the shift. You know that something changed, and maybe you don't know how to name it, but your soul feels it. That ache of invisibility. That quiet question, do I still matter? You smile when you need to. You say, I'm okay because that's what's expected. But deep inside, there's a kind of silence that goes deeper than noise. A silence that feels like being forgotten. And you wonder, if people don't notice you slipping away, will God? You don't say it out loud, but your heart whispers it. Lord, everyone's moved on. Did you? And that question, though quiet, is loaded with fear. Because you can handle being left out of plans, but not left out of presence. You can handle seasons of waiting, but not the idea that God might have moved on too. But what if he didn't? What if, when the world rushed ahead, God stayed in the stillness with you? What if, while others stepped into the spotlight, he drew closer to your shadows? What if your place of being forgotten by many has become the very space where you're about to be remembered by him? Maybe you haven't been left behind. Maybe you've been held. Maybe this space isn't a void, it's a sanctuary. And maybe God hasn't moved on at all. Maybe he's been sitting right beside you, waiting for your eyes to meet his again, not to catch up to the world, but to catch your breath in him. Her name was Ellen. She used to be everywhere. Church groups, school events, community dinners, family road trips. Her calendar used to be so full she had to color-code it. She was the friend who organized the meals. When someone was sick, the mom who never missed a recital, the wife who knew every detail of the household like it was muscle memory. And then, life changed. Her kids grew up and moved away, one to another state, the other overseas. Her husband passed away quietly one early morning, just didn't wake up. And the world didn't stop. It didn't even slow down. Everyone else kept moving. Birthdays, promotions, marriages, posts and pictures and hashtags. And Ellen? She was still standing in the doorway of a house that had grown quiet, trying to remember the last time someone asked her what she needed. It wasn't bitterness she felt, just absence. A hollow sort of echo that followed her into each room. The texts became fewer. The invitations stopped coming. It wasn't that people didn't care. They just moved on. And somehow, she became invisible. Not because she faded, but because life moved so quickly past her. She still prayed, still loved God. But there were moments, especially in the early mornings before the world woke up, when she sat at her kitchen table with her coffee and asked, God, do you still see me? Am I still part of something? Or has everyone, including you, moved on? She didn't say it out loud to anyone else. It felt too vulnerable, too dramatic. So she kept doing what she'd always done, making lists, staying organized, showing up at church with a smile. But inside, she was grieving a life that had quietly shifted without asking her if she was ready. Then one afternoon, while cleaning out the guest room her daughter used to stay in, Ellen found an old prayer journal from her early 30s. It was filled with scribbled prayers, little verses, moments when she had pleaded with God for strength, for provision, for clarity. And as she sat on the edge of the bed reading those words from decades ago, something inside her softened. She could remember those prayers like they were yesterday. She remembered how scared she was, how dependent she was on God back then, how real he felt in those chaotic, noisy years of motherhood and uncertainty. She hadn't realized how quiet her dependence had become, how much she'd started to assume that God had already done all the big things for her. But as she read those old entries, she whispered, almost out loud, "God, I miss needing you like that." And right there, in the silence of that room, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Not a voice, not a vision, just a knowing that she hadn't been left behind. That even in her stillness, even in her obscurity, God had stayed. Not to push her forward, but to walk beside her slowly. That moment didn't change everything. The house was still quiet. The texts didn't suddenly flood in, but something inside Ellen had shifted. She started lighting a candle each morning when she prayed, not for ambiance, but as a way to mark the moment. I am still here. And God is too. It became her ritual, her way of reclaiming space, not as forgotten, but as holy. She began to understand that being remembered by the world wasn't the same as being remembered by heaven. And maybe the quiet wasn't punishment. Maybe it was invitation. And maybe what the world saw as empty, God was filling with something deeper. My child, I never moved on without you. I never rushed ahead and left you behind. I was never in a hurry to outgrow you, to overlook you, or to wait for you to catch up. I stayed. I saw the day the house grew quiet. I saw the moment you closed the door and realized no one would be knocking anymore. I watched the world spin forward while you sat still, trying to remember who you were before everything changed. And I want you to know, I never forgot you. Not for a moment. Not even for a breath. You feel invisible. I see you. You feel passed over. I chose you. You feel like everyone else is building something new while you're surrounded by reminders of what was, but I am not confined to what others see. I don't value you based on how busy your life looks. I don't measure your worth by relevance or productivity. I don't need your platform, your presence online, your invitations to events. I just want you. And I never stopped wanting you. I know how much it hurts to feel left out of the story, especially when you used to be at the center of it. I know how painful it is to be the one who always showed up, only to wonder why no one shows up for you now. But hear me. What the world forgets, I remember. What the world overlooks, I tend to. What the world moves past, I remain in. And I have not moved past you. I don't need you to get back out there. I'm not rushing you into a new season. I'm not asking you to pretend this doesn't feel lonely. I just want to sit with you in the space that everyone else skipped. Want to be your anchor when everything feels unsteady. I want to be your breath in the quiet. I want to fill your ordinary days with extraordinary grace. You've wondered if you've outlived your purpose. But what if your purpose isn't about productivity? What if it's about presence? Your presence with me. Your heart aligned with mine. What if this isn't the end of your usefulness, but the beginning of a new kind of closeness? One where you don't have to earn anything. One where you don't have to be needed to be known. Even to your old age. I am He. I am He who will sustain you. I made you. I carry you. I will rescue you. You are not abandoned. You are not in the way. You are not too late. You are not less valuable in the quiet than you were in the noise. In fact, some of my greatest work in you begins when the world grows still. So let me speak into this silence. Let me remind you that you are seen. Let me rebuild the places inside you that the world had no time to notice. I am not finished with you. I never was. I've only just begun a new thing, something that does not depend on applause or attention or output, but something eternal, something rooted in love. You are not forgotten. You are being held. You are not behind. You are being guided. You are not invisible. You are being drawn closer. So let me stay with you. You don't have to try harder. You don't have to fill the space with activity. You just have to let me love you here. In the stillness, in the pause, in the space the world moved past. I never did. Maybe the world did move on. Maybe the people who used to check in stopped calling. Maybe the rooms that once echoed with laughter are now filled with quiet. But just because the pace of your life has slowed doesn't mean your value has faded. And just because others no longer see your season doesn't mean it's over. Maybe it means something deeper is beginning. Because sometimes what looks like being left behind is actually being held in place for something more eternal, more rooted, more true. You see, God doesn't measure time the way the world does. The world values momentum, but God values formation. And formation takes time, stillness, silence, hiddenness. The places no one else sees, those are the places where He begins to whisper new life into dry ground. You may not be launching a new project, building something the world can applaud, or constantly moving forward, but you are not stuck. You are being shaped. And shaping always happens slow, quiet, sacred. This space you're in, it may feel empty, but it's not. It may feel invisible, but it's not meaningless. What if the very thing you've called being forgotten is the place where God is doing the most intentional work of all? What if this isn't a holding cell? It's a healing room. There is something beautiful that happens when we no longer chase to keep up, but begin to walk again, slowly, with God. When we stop measuring ourselves by milestones and begin to find meaning in the everyday moments, the morning coffee with the Word open on your lap, the simple prayer whispered over the sink, the smile you give to a stranger even when no one smiles back. These moments, unseen, unposted, unpraised, are holy, because they are full of presence, and presence is always the beginning of restoration. God is not waiting for you to bounce back. He is inviting you to begin again, not in the eyes of the world, but in His. You're not starting over, you're starting deeper, not from scratch, but from truth. The truth that your life is still meaningful, that your voice still matters, that your breath is still a miracle, that your season still carries glory, even if it doesn't look impressive to anyone else. Maybe you don't need to catch up. Maybe you just need to be caught in the grace that holds you, in the arms that never moved on, in the gaze that never looked away. And maybe, just maybe, the beauty of this season isn't in what you do next, but in how deeply you allow yourself to be loved right now. So rest. Not because you're giving up, but because you're giving in to the kind of love that says, you're still here, you still belong, and I'm not done with you. So now I gently ask you, what if being left behind wasn't a curse, but a calling? What if the stillness wasn't punishment, but preparation? And what if this quiet space you're sitting in right now is the exact place where God has been waiting to meet you? Not when you're busy, not when you're admired, but here, in the quiet, in the in-between. You've asked yourself quietly, does anyone see me anymore? But maybe the deeper question is this: am I willing to be seen by the one who never looked away? This is your moment. Not to perform, not to prove, not to catch up, but to rest, to release the pressure of being relevant, of being visible, of being enough in the eyes of a world that's always moving. You are already enough in the eyes of the one who stayed. If your soul is tired, if your heart feels forgotten, if you're wondering if this season will ever end, come, not with perfection, not with polished prayers. Just come as you are. And if you need words to say, let this be your prayer. God, I feel like the world moved on without me. I've watched others grow, rise, and run ahead while I stayed still. Hurt, confused, unsure of what's next. I've questioned whether you saw me, whether you stayed. But today I want to believe again. I want to believe you're here in this room, in this silence, in this version of me that doesn't have anything impressive to show. I give you this space I've called empty. I give you this version of me I've called forgotten. And I ask you to fill it, not with answers, but with presence. I don't want to rush anymore. I just want to rest in the truth that you never left. You don't have to be caught up to be called. You don't have to be seen by many to be known by God. You don't have to move forward today. You just have to breathe. And let this be your sacred reminder. Even when the world moved on, God stayed, and so did grace, and so can you.